Shalom, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Pulse of Israel. I am Avi Abelo here in our eternal and ancestral homeland of the Judean hills of the land of Israel. As you know, censorship on social media is growing, and they are not helping our voice get out there. The best way to support our work and the videos we make is to go sign up for our newsletter at pulseofisrael.com and share our videos. And if you're already a subscriber, thank you. All right, today I am speaking with David Bedin about a really important update as well as other updates with some potentially good news, which we don't always hear. So let us introduce David Bedin. Shalom, David. How are you?
Very well, thank you. I'm sitting in the courtyard of the Marat Machpelah, the Cave of the Patriarchs, with some interesting news. Number one,
the last time anyone who's not familiar, David is the director of the Nachum Bedin Center for Near East Policy Research. And we last spoke back in September about how the UAE, which just recently became one of Israel's newest peace partner, or like a normalization agreement between the UAE and Israel, but you basically exposed to everyone they happen to also be a huge funder towards the education of genocide of Israel by funding UNRWA. So what is the update today, David?
Well, first of all, what I said in September was true until last Thursday, that they were the number 5 contributor to UNRWA in the world, to the tune of $51 million a year, and the head of the advisory council to UNRWA, and also the number 1 supporter of UNRWA in the Arab world, and they got an award from UNRWA for all their help for education. Now, our agency has translated this, have commissioned translations of the school books. We've produced 24 films of what's happening in UNRWA. No question, it's training children to make war against the Jews. Now, the two positive developments. Last Thursday, while we were getting together our annual report called the UNRWA Transparency Report, we give to the head of the UN, Mr. Guterres, the Secretary General. We prepared for our meeting 2 days ago, and we were surprised to see that there's no mention of the UAE amongst the 10 funders, 10 big funders. Not only that, they went from $51 million to $1 million, with no indication they're giving it anything more than that. And wow, this is a very, very important development. I checked with my sources in the UAE, and the sources are, well, David, they're listening to you. Now, we were the only ones writing about it. We wrote in 5 languages, and we publicized as much as we could, and we felt kind of alone. And all of a sudden, it worked. Now, this is very, very important to know, because if they hadn't pulled their funding, I would be coming on your show now and saying, well, you know, this business of their anti-incitement agreement, which is what the most important element of the accord with the UAE, it's just false. It's fake news, but it's real news now. So the UAE is out of the picture. Now, will there be a lot of pressure to put them back into the picture? Of course there will be, from the Arab world, maybe even from the Biden administration. A lot depends on the feedback they get. The UAE, I must emphasize, they have an office at the United Nations. If they get good feedback, 40, 50, 60 letters, I think that would be very, very helpful.
Give people instructions. What can people do right now? What can people do to give the good feedback to UAE?
You look under the UAE, the United Arab Emirates site at the United Nations. It's right there. Or you can type it in on the Google. It's right there. You'll see how to contact them. Not a problem to contact them. They need feedback.
We're making a call. We're making a call. Everyone can make a difference. We want to say thank you to the UAE for doing the right thing, pulling out funding towards educating genocide against Israel. Say thank you, and by that feedback of saying thank you, hopefully giving them the backbone to stand up to all the pressure they're going to feel from the world and potentially even from the Biden administration. So it's so
remember, honor in the Arab world. I'm a social worker by profession. I was trained in working with the Arab population and with the Sephardi population in Israel. Honor is one of the most important aspects. The fact that they're keeping their word, the fact that they signed a deal, no incitement, fighting against incitement. This is very important. Now, this leads to the other news item I have for you today. 2 days ago, our agency met with the office of Guterres, the Secretary General. We met with the head of his office. We did it this time on Zoom. This is our 6th meeting. The other 5 meetings were in person. And we were initially only going to give the issue of the fact that they've been claiming poverty over the past year, and they're getting all $1.4 billion is flowing to them. We interviewed all their ambassadors and all the consuls of the donor nations. That was going to be the story. All of a sudden, we see that UNRWA has very proudly put on their website that 58% of that $1.4 million coming from more than 50 countries
1.4 million or 1.4 billion?
$1.4 billion is going to education. Now, that seems like nice. Reading, writing, and Retzach. And what we're seeing here is
David
a system.
The Hebrew word Retzach, which means murder. Meaning the education they're educating towards is reading, writing, and to murder Jews.
Now, I'm not exaggerating. What we were showing, Dr. Arnon Gross, who holds a doctorate in Islamic studies and has been studying the new Palestinian Authority school books used by UNRWA for the last 20 years. We're talking about almost 1,100 school books, and we have school books specifically in the last 3 years where children sing songs about exterminating the Jews. And this is what we showed, that we showed the 12 most egregious examples to Mr. Guterres' office. That's the Secretary General. And they listened, and they were amazed to see it. Not the first time, but they're amazed just how bad it's gotten. That there is no hiding of what they're doing. They're not trying to obfuscate anything. Now, you can see the report. I have a website, IsraelBehindTheNews.com. And we have a new website called UNRWAMonitor.com, UNRWA-monitor.com. You can see that. It's all there. Now, we presented this with Dr. Gross in the office. We did it on Zoom. But also on the Zoom was Rabbi Abraham Cooper, from the Simon Wiesenthal. He's the associate dean of the Simon Wiesenthal Center. We called him in from Los Angeles. He gave his 2 cents and said the following to Mr. Guterres: we want an immediate condemnation of the anti-Semitism in these schools. And it's very unusual for an NGO that's registered with the United Nations to make such an assertive statement. And he made a demand. I've just sent the demand over to Avi's website, and I'm sure he'll put it up. It's on my site tonight. But take a look at it in terms of the wording. Very, very important. They're expecting Mr. Guterres, who has made his reputation in his 3-4 years as the Secretary General of coming out against anti-Semitism in every possible way. And not only that, but the whole issue of at the United Nations, every January 26th, observing International Holocaust Commemoration Day. That's part of the deal of what Guterres has made sure happens with a lot of vigor. Now, again, what we're seeing here is a regression. In other words, and by the way, very important, United Nations doesn't give any money to UNRWA. UNRWA operates under the framework of the donor nations. The biggest donor nation, now that the United States pulled back. And to the credit of President Trump, he saw the school books. We got to him, showed him, and he pulled out. Now, what's very important to know, there's a lot of pressure to put the money back in. If you look on the UNRWA website, it's done so well by 3 public relations firms, you'll want to give them money. They obfuscate what's in the content. And what we try to do is put what is in there. And I must emphasize to you, Avi, I'm a social work professional, and I'm also, obviously, I work in the media. But I have to be honest. If there was one school book that promoted the peaceful intentions of a United Nations agency, we would put it out tomorrow morning. But that doesn't exist. And what's most important is we not only have studied the school books, we've also studied the phenomena of terror organizations taking over the teachers' union and the workers' union of UNRWA, and we have added to that our studies of terrorist complicity in the running of UNRWA, taking the supplies and putting it into the hands of terrorists. We've worked with this only for 30 years. That's almost half my life. And I want to tell you something. That's the story. Now, what you can do about it? If you're a resident of the United States is now considering the reinstatement of the funds. Where that's going to, the decision will be made in the House Foreign Relations Committee in the United States Congress. They have a subcommittee chaired by a man named Ted Deutsch, the Middle East Subcommittee. Write that name down. Now, I hope that in the future I'll be able to give more updates to Avi about what happens there, because Ted Deutsch, his committee, and he happens to be Jewish, and not because he's Jewish will he favor being fair, because he's a man of integrity. We know him, but he needs a lot of feedback, not organizations, but individuals. And I want to emphasize how Washington operates. I'm 70 years old this week. And I think I'm 32, but that's okay. One of my friends is retiring from Congress right now, from working in Congress after being on the Hill for 45 years, my age. I asked, okay, how does Congress work? He says, if we get 10 letters on any issue and they seem reasonable, we go into a tizzy. I'm asking that more than 10 people write personal letters to Congress, use our material. It says on our website, copyright, please take our material, use it.
To write specifically to Ted Deutsch, you're saying?
Ted Deutsch is the key guy. He's going to be the person who will basically will make it or break it. He's under pressure.
What should people write? What should people write?
Say, okay, we want to make sure that if you reinstate funds to UNRWA, no money goes to education until there's a revamping of all the education system there, a reform, a really understanding that the UNRWA education has nothing to do with the United Nations values. It's promoting war against the Jews. There has never been a school system, not even in the Nazis, never have been a school system promoting war against the Jews and justifying murder. What do I mean by justifying murder? What Dr. Gross showed Guterres' office is 3 pages in honor of a woman who attacked a bus and murdered 13 children and 25 civilians back in 1978. And she's the hero of the school book. And this is the kicker. They've added to the school books, and I've shown this on your program before. You can take the clip and show it anytime you want. The children in the 3rd grade reciting a poem where the children talk about what they're going to do when they liberate Palestine to exterminate those who live here. And they made it into a song. We found it on 50 school websites, UNRWA school websites, a song about exterminating the Jews. There's a problem here.
And
donor
forgive me, David, if I just interrupt you. I know I've seen materials that you've put out that even math includes problems that are about killing Jews. I don't remember the exact example.
Every subject matter in the schools, you see it ensconced in all the curriculum. Whether it's math or whether it's science, and also what we've been filming for the last 6 months. This will be in our next film, where the teachers are teaching the children that Jews are infected, the Jews are diseased, the Jews carry COVID and communicate COVID. You'll see it on the top of our website, what we're able to take. So the next film will show that. And our programs are not, we don't work for a government. We're only privately supported. You can find out how to privately support us on our site, IsraelBehindTheNews.com or UNRWAMonitor.com. You can see it. All I can say is getting involved is very, very important. And if you hear the sounds above me, that's the mosque next to the Marat Machpelah, which is where I'm sitting at right now, the Cave of the Patriarchs. Why am I here? Because I have 8 grandchildren who live here in Hebron, and one of them has a birthday today, so we're celebrating the birthday, and my other 2 grandchildren from Tacoma will be here. So
David, that's a great answer to all the hatred and genocide in the textbooks that UNRWA promotes.
Precisely. And by the way,
we have children, we have grandchildren. We're about living. They're about educating to kill. And listen, thank you so much. And I'm so happy that you're giving everyone two action items. One action item, we say thank you. Go to the UAE site on the the UAE site on the United Nations website, and send in emails saying thank you for pulling funding from educating from genocide
and for keeping your honor. You're keeping your word. Honor.
And keeping your word. Okay, good. Use that language. Everyone say thank you and for keeping your word and pulling your funding for UNRWA that's going towards genocide. And the second action item is to create an email to Ted Deutsch. Go to the Congress website.
I would be very. One thing I want to say, I would be very careful with the word genocide. The genocide appears in one of their school books, but the concept of war against the Jews is throughout their school books. So I would say the issue of incitement to war against the Jews is what to emphasize, because we've found one school book where the word genocide, where the concept of extermination is used, but the others throughout, the concept of making war against the Jews, dying in the struggle, killing the Jews, that's there. I see one other last comment. I've been at this for many, many years. The change in the education from the PLO and UNRWA is from, they used to push hatred. Now they're pushing the concept of killing. It's much more lethal concept, and as a social work professional, if it was only attitude and hatred, we could do something about that. This is much worse. Thank you.
Perfect timing, because it looks like it sounds like they're making their calls to prayer much louder. David,
To the right of me, there's people going for mincha here at the Marat Makbila, the Cave of the Patriarch. They're going for afternoon prayers, and they're bowing down.
So David's witnessing the Jews and the Muslims going to pray at the same time in our holy site in Hebron, and that's the future. We'll be living together. David, thank you for all the wonderful work you're doing. Keep it up.
Pleasure. Let's stay in touch. Shalom.
Shalom, shalom. Thank you. And everyone, thank you for watching. Once again, really, really important, fabulous good news update. It's not often we get good news, and here David's giving us good news that the UAE, an Arab Muslim country, has pulled funding from UNRWA towards its educating materials that educates children in Gaza, Judea, and Samaria to kill Jews. So thank you to the UAE, everyone. Our 2 action items, and we can do this, and it's simple. Go to the United Nations website, find the UAE, and write them an email saying thank you for pulling the funding and sticking to your word, and then an email to Ted Deutsch, and saying that if the United States, under the Biden administration, decides to return funding to UNRWA that would be used towards these educational programs teaching kids to kill Jews, email Ted Deutsch, say if U.S. goes back to returning or funding the UNRWA, do not allow funds to go towards education. That will give him the backbone to stand up for that in his subcommittee. Everyone, really, really important 2 action items we can all do simply and make a difference. And thank you for watching once again, signing off for another episode of the Pulse of Israel here in our eternal and ancestral homeland, the Jewish people.
Pulse of Israel, frontline videos from the Holy Land. Support our work by donating today.